Before we jump in, I do want to introduce my lovely guests here. To my left is Jordan Coley. Jordan is a Brooklyn-based writer, comedian, and actor. He is the recipient of the Susan M. Hawes TV Writing Fellowship, a writing grant sponsored by Oscar-winning writer Cord Jefferson. In 2024, he starred in the film No Sleep Till, which won a special mention at the Venice Film Festival Critics Week. In addition to his writing and acting, he hosts Jordan Show, a recurring late-night talk show, and past guests include comedians Jabuki Young-White, Sabrina Wu, award-winning critic Vincent Cunningham, and artist-filmmaker Martine Sims. Jordan's own art and cultural criticism has appeared in The New Yorker, GQ, New York Times, and other publications. And Angélika Beener is the producer and host of Milestones, Celebrating the Culture, a popular podcast series in partnership with WBGO, where she and special guests thoughtfully examine a curated selection of landmark albums, people, and events celebrating milestone anniversaries. Angélika has contributed her work to Tidal, the Huffington Post's, Downbeat, NPR Music, Jazz at Lincoln Center, the New York Times, and among many other places. So please give a warm welcome to both of them. Yeah.
Good to be here.
I guess to start us off, I'm curious for you both, what did it feel like watching Superfly this time around? Do you have a kind of earliest memory of the film, of watching the film, and did anything stand out to you this time that didn't before?
I mean, it's my first time seeing it on the big screen. I watched it with my cousins a zillion times on like a little big old TV, in my cousin's basement. This time, the last time I watched it was with a class. I was like TAing this class for this professor Donald Bogle, who's written about this movie, this time, like last time, was a little funny because you really realize just how long that bathtub sex scene is when you're sitting in a group of people that you don't know. You're like, he really just wanted to get every shot.
All the angles.
Yeah, but it was really cool to see it on the big screen. Of course, to see it in Harlem and seeing this on the Schomburg. So it was awesome.
Thank you.
I'm gonna concur with you about the love scene. I was like, I'm really happy I'm sitting alone. I think one of the things that stood out to me in watching it as an adult is how much music is in the film, how long they let the songs play. And I think that really helps to contextualize the movie. Curtis's lyrics, how poignant they are, how colorful they are, and you have that supporting the film in a way that it's not like snippets or here and there. I mean, they really let the music breathe. So I think, and I think part of that was because the script, they just didn't have like a big script, a very long script. Yeah. But I think it ends up working in a really beautiful, artistic way.
Yeah, they're like, just play more songs. That's good.
Exactly.
No, and they incorporate the music both like diegetically in the film and as the score. Like sometimes I noticed he put the record on and they're just playing more Curtis, and I thought that was really funny. He's like, let me just run it back one more time.
Yeah, it's so funny. So initially, when Curtis Mayfield was asked to score this film, well, he wasn't actually asked initially to score it. He was asked to play that set in the saloon, and then they were just like, "Why don't you score the film?" So I'm curious to hear from you a little bit, Angélika, about kind of the climate of soul music at the time, and kind of as we're on this precipice of funk. It's 1972. Can you paint us a little picture of what was happening in Black music at the time?
That's a great question, because I think that Black music, Black culture, Black people as a whole at the top of the 70s were really kind of recalibrating. We had lost Malcolm, Medgar, countless others, and then I think in 68 with King dying, that was sort of like the proverbial like nail in the coffin for like a certain faction of the civil rights movement. And then now we're in the top of the 70s and we're sort of, like reimagining what struggle and revolution will look like. for Black people in this next chapter. And I think you hear that in the music that just predates this album, with what we all heard when everyone was coming in, what's going on, and Sly, and there's a riot going on, and the revolution will not be televised. All this is around, 1971, 72. So I think you hear the struggle and the frustration and the indictment and the hope, in the music around that time.
Absolutely. I think you both kind of noted this just at the top, but I'm curious for you, as sort of you were watching this film and seeing the score kind of unravel in real time with images and with the context of the plot. How do you feel that the score itself kind of paints a picture of the hustle? And like, is the hustle a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And like, what critique, if in any critique, is the kind of score telling us? That's a great question. I read somewhere that Curtis Mayfield said that he didn't want the score to just be like an infomercial for like pimping and drug dealing. He wanted to have a counterpoint to some of the images that people are seeing, especially kids are going to be seeing in the film. And I think it does so. And I think to Angélika's point, like it captures the energy of the era, which I feel like a big part of this film and a big part of the score is someone asking themselves about self-definition. How do I choose the life I want to live, given the circumstances that I've been born into, given the way I've been conditioned? How do I like run against that and find a new path for myself? And I feel like you hear that in the lyrics. I forget in Superfly, in the title song, he's like, I have a dream, but I don't know what that means, or something like that. It's like he's actively questioning what he wants to vision of his life to be. Absolutely.
And I think we got to remember that Curtis Mayfield was from the hood. I mean, he grew up in Cabrini Green projects in the north side of Chicago. Yeah. And so I feel like he was able to really tap into exactly, like, not that sort of sensationalism of, the pimping and the women and the, the criminality and everything, but sort of elevating and intellectualizing it as well. And I think that the film does it too. Priest is contemplating, and I think what's really interesting about Priest is that there's no big scheme on the other side of him getting out. You know what I mean? Like, he wants the privilege of time. Yeah. He wants the privilege of, he wants to breathe and think, and he wants to do so comfortably. He doesn't want to be broke doing it, and that's something that, Black folks aren't afforded, which is the luxury of being able to think in peace and pay your rent, and just not have to worry. Yeah.
I love that point. I think that sometimes Blaxploitation as a kind of genre gets this really bad rep because in this moment, as sort of we're in the wake of Black Power and we're in the thick of it, the idea that criminality is at the fore of representation in these ways was sort of often critiqued And I guess I'm curious for you all, like, today, how do you feel like the legacy of Blaxploitation kind of lives on, and what does it mean to you today?
I feel like we learned some of the lessons that this film was maybe trying to see to us, and we also didn't. You know what I mean? I feel like there's a strong element in lots of parts of like Black popular culture right now. People trying to divest from such explicitly capitalistic mindset and be more holistic in how we think about what a successful life looks like, and what a healthy life looks like. But then there's also another part of like Black popular culture that is very much the Eddie, right? It's like, I'm gonna live long, I'm gonna be rich, and I'm gonna do what I need to do, and I don't care if I have to turn my back on you to do that, And I think I don't blame anyone for the path they choose, because we do live in the world and in the country we live in and the times we live in. But yeah, I think there's certainly there's a bit of both happening. And I think if anything, the types of lives that Black people can live and what success looks like has only multiplied since this era, and gotten more complex.
Yeah, totally.
I agree 100%. I think that if you don't have the Blaxploitation era, you don't have a Spike Lee. Yeah. You don't have, all of a Ryan Coogler, really, because, and I think that, it was tough for Ron O'Neal and some of the people that got a lot of flack around the time the film came out. But they were doing what Black people have always done, and that is that we use the resources we have, and we do what it is that we can do with what we have. And I think that there was a head of the NAACP Hollywood chapter that actually coined the term Blaxploitation in 1972 and felt that it was such a stain on Black people. It's like we get one shot and, everything has to be perfect. And I think it's interesting that this movie comes out the same year as arguably one of the greatest, films in cinema history, and that's The Godfather. And it doesn't get any more criminal, it doesn't get any more violent, and, all the things, right? But it's lauded as this great, as it should be, great cinematic art, and it's not sort of representative of, the white race at large. But Black folks, we don't get that same luxury, and so then there becomes this inner sort of infighting where it's like, you're making us look bad. Yeah. But Ron O'Neal was a Shakespearean trained actor. Yeah. He'd won an Obie Award, you know what I mean? He'd done Broadway. So it's not that the indictment should be on Hollywood and the gatekeepers, not what we had to do under the circumstances. So I think if you don't, and then also the soundtrack, right? Like putting these iconic soundtracks with film is what gave film, the films, what made them sell, what made them popular, what made them say, they could no longer say Black movies don't make money. You know what I mean? So I think that, yeah, there's some really bad Blaxploitation films out there, but I think if we don't have that movement, we're not where we are today.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that what you're saying about representation being, allowed to be indulgent and criminal for white people and people in kind of racial power versus the folks that have been historically marginalized is kind of the crux of the issue, right? It's like we should be able to be allowed to make the types of films that we want. And I think that's something that always feels really refreshing to me about watching Blaxploitation films, and like why I've always been really interested in them is because there's this kind of escapist thing that happens where you're sort of transported to that decade. And I think, I'm from Washington Heights, but growing up, I think I've always grown up hearing stories of what Harlem was like back in the day and like what it was like, what it felt like in the 70s. And I think what's so special about this film for me is always like, wow, I get to see these sort of images of what New York felt like back then. I guess like something that I'm curious to hear you both talk about is just like the concept of flyness. Like what does fly like, how does Fly like compare in the 1970s to now? Like if we dropped this character, if we dropped Priest in Harlem today, what would he look like? Yeah. Sorry.
What it makes me think about is like how many times do you think they had to like straighten his hair like
exactly
between takes?
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know what he would look like if he was now, but I think it speaks to like that tradition of like of self-representation and self-respect. Chin up, chest out. Like these people, that we see in this film are coming from a very rough place, but they always look like the sharpest people in the room every time we see them in every scene. And I think there's something about a commentary there in the film as well, where it's sort of saying like, the flyness won't save you. You can have a great life and you can look real good doing it, but no amount of the tricked out like Cadillac and the nice vines. What do you say? Whole life I wanted these vines, and, like no amount of that is gonna change the fact that you're gonna have to decide how you want to live your life and like whether you want to what you want your values to be. And I think that's the cool element of it. But yeah, I mean, were he around right now, he'd be incredibly fly. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I mean, this might sound broad and cliche, but I think black and fly are just interchangeable. Like we just are that. You know what I mean? I mean, no matter what, resources we have, we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna figure out how to be fly. You know what I mean? And I think that's really what it is, the creativity of black folks, the way that we have had to figure out how to be fly, because it's not being fly is not an option. You know, it just is. And I also think that, like, there are some people who still look like priests in Harlem today. So
Exactly. Yeah.
and I love them. I love that for them too. I love it. You know? Yeah.
Timeless. Literally. Yeah, I agree. I think something maybe this time around watching it that really stood out for me is like how much you root for, like, or how much I was rooting for all the scammers. Like, I think that that's something that I do when I watch movies. I'm like, okay, I want to root for the scammer. And I guess, like, I'm curious for you both, how do you feel about kind of the archetype of the complicated villain, or the complicated, the sort of villainous protagonist? Yeah.
Yeah. Angélika mentioned the NAACP chapter guy. I think I looked it up too. His name is Junius Griffin, which I think is hilarious because I'm like, that's a name that should be in this movie. Like,
Exactly.
he should be in this movie.
Yeah.
But those, I feel like I can see why people might have had a adverse reaction to see, like, you know, showing complicated heroes, like people who do bad things, being the hero of the film. Because this film doesn't really, it kind of is a complex thing. It kind of implicates everybody. Like, I love that sequence where we have the montage of them dealing to all the different types of people, like, you know, the construction worker guy, the black businessman, the party boy, and whatever. And it kind of is saying, like, you know, everybody's a part of this. Just because he's the one, you know, at the forefront pushing it doesn't mean he's like, there aren't a whole bunch of different types of people involved in this whole thing. So I think that was a very clever thing that the movie does, and I think it also you know, and also how it implicates the cops as well. Like, you know, like it's cool to see the person who's traditionally the one taking the brunt of, like, the you know, the one who's being thrown in jail or going to get beat up, him getting one over on the cops, beating them at their own game. I think that's really, really exciting to see, because, you know, it says the film is saying, like, this world isn't the moral good and bad that you were traditionally taught exists, doesn't really exist in this world. And why shouldn't the guy at the bottom come out on top? At least here, you know?
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that in television, there's, I mean, two of my favorite shows are Breaking Bad and The Sopranos, right? Where you don't get, you know, a worse villain than, you know, Tony Soprano and Walter White. And we love to root for them, right? Because we see the humanity in them. No matter how vile or vicious or awful they are, we see their humanity. I think, you know, to Jordan's point, it's like that's what we get to do with Blaxploitation films, right? Like, we get to see them do karate and, you know, stick it to the man.
Yeah.
We get to see them stick it to the man and win. And, you know, I have an uncle who, I asked him, because he was 18 when it came out, and he saw it with my grandfather. You know, my grandfather took him and his brother to see it. And I was like, what was that like, being 18, you know, seeing it in Harlem or the Bronx, you know, what was that like? And he was like, you know, Shaft was great. And, you know, we love Shaft, and, you know, that was, you know, the year before, and it did all the great things that it did for black folks. But he was like, at the end of the day, he was a cop. You know, he was like, you know, in this film, we got to see, to your point, like, we got to see justice. We got to see him, you know, kick butt and take names and win, you know, so, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I thought it was so fun to see that scene where they're in the saloon moment, and the brothers from sort of this, like, Black Power, Black Nation ish group come in, and they're sort of just like, you owe us something, and he's just kind of like no, like, I don't. Like, this is my money. I think that was, such a funny kind of intersection where it's like, they almost could have made some kind of like political remark around like, yeah, of course, like we should pay our dues. But then it kind of did the thing of being like,
Psych.
yeah, actually no. Like, no, we're not gonna critique this vessel. Yeah.
I ain't giving you.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, and that's the thing, right? He's complicated. He's flawed. He's a hypocrite in some ways. And I think that's the beauty of this film, is that we get to sit in a place of discomfort, in a place of conflict. There's no right or wrong, and that is all of us. That is the beauty, I think, of this film.
Yeah, and to your point, it's a thing that is celebrated in white films all the time. Like you talked about the Godfather. In The Godfather, it's almost the reverse of this. Like Michael's outside the life, and he chooses to go into the life at the end of the film, and we're like, clapping.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is a person who's just like taking his life into his own hands and choosing something else, and it's supposed to be this bad, terrible thing. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Before we open it up to Q&As, so in just a moment, anyone that has questions, you all can kind of line up at the back at those two mics and ask your questions. I have one more kind of last question, and that's just about the sort of legacy of funk that this is leaving behind. I kind of want to hear a little bit from both of you about kind of like where do you feel that funk kind of stands in our culture today? Yeah.
But we could use more.
Yeah.
We could use more. We want the funk.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
Like gotta have it.
Yeah.
I think that it. I think there's a reason why it dominated. Over a decade. From James Brown giving us one of the greatest affirmations of all time, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud, and there's funk under that, and it was contemporary, it was fresh, it was, and then it became the bedrock of the global phenomenon that is now hip hop.
Exactly.
So I think funk is very important, and I think we need that soul and that funk and that bass back. I was looking at everybody bopping, and just really, it makes you feel, I don't know, it's just so black. We just need it back.
We do. We do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's imbued in other music that's come since it. I think it's like carried on in certain ways, but it feels so vibrant and so fresh. I think when we see it in something like this, because it's like still at that part where it hasn't been fully co-opted and commercialized. I thought it was in that montage scene where they're like cutting and selling the stuff. They at one point they're cutting cocaine over a Sly Stone record, and I thought that was like kind of a little funny nod, like it's in everything that it's like it's in the air, and in a way that I feel like it was because it was so fresh and new and like exciting.
Yeah. All right. Thank you both, and let's open it up to Q&A.
Good evening. Lloyd Morris. I was 14 years old in 1972. I was growing up in the Bronx at that time. And when I first started watching the movie, I started crying because the people that I watched the movie with, a lot of them aren't living anymore. And the theater that I saw it in doesn't exist anymore. And why I was crying is because a lot of those people that are not here anymore went into that lifestyle and they died early, and we spent time in jail. I've done prison time also. But also, the negative part of it is that it's evolved into the so-called, gangster rap. And a lot of people aren't fly anymore. They're sagging and stuff like that. So there's been some negativity that's evolved out of that too. But it was good to see that film again and brought back a lot of memories. And unfortunately, we can't bring back those people that lived that lifestyle and passed away, and they were great people. They were very influential in my life. And thank you very much. You're young, but your outlook on your philosophy and your analysis of the movie is excellent. However, you being so young and not being there at that time, I'm letting you know that it did influence a lot of people. And when I saw the Mac, I wanted to be a pimp. Peace and love.
Hello? Hey. I want to say thank you for this screening. This is one of my favorite movies of all times. I am curious to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on soul and where soul is going when it comes to black cinema? I think that's one of the things that just reeks throughout this film in a very positive way. The music, of course, the music that's telling the story, the way he wears his Vans, the way he drives off, and you know, the slang, everything. I'm just and also how that also transports into further movies like New Jack City. I'm just curious to hear from you. Where do you see black soul going in present day cinema, black cinema?
That's a great question. I mean, I'm trying. As you were asking the question, I was trying to think of what was the last movie that gave me a feeling like that. You know, where it was imbued with the music, the score, the acting, everything was filled with that kind of like black soul presence. And I can't even think of like the most recent one. I don't know. Sinners perhaps. But yeah, I don't know. Like Angélika said, I think we need more of it. We need to bring it back. I think stuff like this feels that way and it exists that way because it was made kind of outside the studio system and with people just like there weren't a lot of permits and Teamsters on that shoot. They were just running around shooting stuff. Not all those people are actors even, you know. So I think that's part of why it has that feeling, and I think it's harder to replicate that within a Hollywood system, you know.
And I think the legacy of the black soundtrack is so profound that, you know, you want to see that happen again, you know, from obviously all the, I mean, and Curtis Mayfield, I brought the album because I just wanted him in the room with us, you know, because it was Superfly, but it was Claudine, and it was a piece of the action, and Let's Do It Again, and Sparkle, right? Like dominating the 70s. But then we move into the 80s, and, you know, Prince wins an Oscar for a soundtrack for Purple Rain, and, you know, Ghostbusters has a, you know, and then we start becoming, what's the term? Commercial, you know, and crossover. That's the word I'm looking for, you know. But then in the 90s, I think there was like a resurgence of, you know, black soundtracks, you know, your Soul Foods and your Love Jones, and obviously Whitney with The Bodyguard, I think just blew it out of the water. I think that's like the biggest selling soundtrack of all time. And I think that I would love to see us get back to that. And I think to whoever asked that question, I don't know where he went, but, oh, there he is. I think that soul music is our way back to that. So I hope it happens. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Henry, and I want to thank you guys for showing this movie. Shout out to Gordon Parks, you know. At the time, in 1972, I was 8 years old. I was 9 when I saw it, and snuck into the movie theater, you know. And one of the things that really I love about watching them again is the time, 1972, the Cadillacs, you know, the vines, the clothes, the language, you know what I'm saying? And I relate to that. 72, the dope game was strong, you know, but it was what it was at that time. And it was a depiction of black life at its core. You know, you had the revolutionaries, you had the, you know, the Afros, you know, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud, and then you had the music, and you know, Gordon Parks, before Blaxploitation started making the movies, this was his way of taking back the black diaspora of the movies, because they were made mostly by white people. So after that came Superfly, Shaft, the Claudine, Bill Cosby, all of them started getting everything going together. And I just love I could look at this again and again and always see something different that I missed, like, oh snap, I never saw that part before. I never thought about that. And I just kind of like live back in the day, catch a flashback, then I snap out of it. It's 2025, but but as long as y'all gonna have these kind of things going, I will definitely be a part and participate, by any means necessary. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you for this lovely screening and talk back. I just have a question about the women in the film, or women in crime. So I think they're the best drug dealers in the films. Like Georgia was able to use like feminine scripts, the dirty laundry to subvert the white gangsters, and then Cynthia is able to sell the most cocaine out of everyone in the film. So I just wanted to think, like, how do you use like these traditional feminine scripts to subvert power? Yeah. So.
Can you say that last sentence one more time? Because it was so good, and I missed a piece of it.
How we can use feminine scripts to subvert power. So yes.
Yeah, I was struck also by the women in the film. I was struck by the way the black woman was. Okay, let me pick my words here. How the black woman was sort of used, how she. I don't want to offend, but maybe how she was more supportive of him getting out, whereas the white woman was like, what do you mean you want to get out? Like, like, what you mean? Like, what we do? And how often black women are, saddled with that responsibility of the moral one, right? But also like how the black woman, like, that briefcase switch was so slick, right? But then you have the white woman like, this is my house. And even though it is her house, right? Like it was her house and she's providing a safe space for him, he also is understanding that like this is not safe for you to hear this conversation. You gotta go. Where a black woman would kind of understand that real quick. She was like, I'm out. Like she would go in the bedroom without question. But the white woman's like, this is my house. Like where, that kind of thing. So I think it's a very complicated look at women through the lens of race, means, right? Because the white woman, she's obviously wealthy, or so through the lens of means and race, I couldn't help but see these two women who both loved him, but very differently, I would say.
Are you waiting? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the powerful discussion. I had a topic to bring up about cinematography at that time, and I'm just curious about your take on it and what was the talk about this film from a cinematography perspective. I thought the opening shots were very long. Like, I thought it was like, I don't know if this is a dolly track, but it was super long, super complicated. I thought about like 1970s, how could you have pulled that off? The shadows with dark skin and the lighting, and the shots that were chosen that were very static. I thought it was very poetic, also with the music. And I was caught up in the soundtrack, but I needed to just watch it again from a camera perspective. I thought it was very well shot, and I thought about the technology. I was joking with my friend here, but the opening shot, that is like a today's drone shot, but I thought it was very, very well thought out, but I just wanted to hear your discourse about that. Thank you.
Yeah, so in comparison to his father, Gordon Parks Jr. was really more known for his sort of street photography and more like action shots, which I think are really foregrounded here in the film, where you really feel like kind of alive across the city. I also really loved that montage moment where like all the different folks taking drugs, but I think that what felt really special about watching this from like, I think a cinematic lens was just like how New York it felt like texturally. Those are my favorite parts of just like thinking about the kind of like the street photography nature of it. the kind of motion that feels like at play in the film through the lens of Gordon Parks Jr.
Yeah, and I think he did a great job of like also making these figures feel so much larger than life. I feel like there's a lot of low angle shots of these men and women walking up down the street, and like you really get the whole fit, and you really get their power in the frame, and I feel like he does a lot of that, and like shooting the cars as well as him driving through the streets. Yeah, it just had like the texture of like being in the city with him, like you're riding with him for the day or something like that.
I think even some of like the tighter shots where, you know, some of the fight scenes where you don't necessarily need to see, I mean, the end scene we do, you know, because that's like the big finale, but like even when they pick up Freddie and just the way they chose to shoot it so tight and kind of shake the camera so that you know, you feel like you're kind of in the fight, you know, so I think using the camera probably also to, they probably didn't have, you know, to your point earlier about, like not having like a ton of resources for like stunt men and things like that. So I think they used angles to also like make a lot of those scenes feel very realistic too. So, yeah.
They feel like organic and gritty in a way that's like you're in the action. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Keisha. Thank you. I appreciate this film. It was a surprise. My dad actually called me up and said he had 2 tickets to the Schomburg, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm off today, I'll come. I did not know that I was, you know, going to be so touched by this movie. I've seen it maybe once or twice before, but never in depth. I don't have a question, but what I am going to say, it's type personal, but, you know, we all here, we went through things and, you know, our lives progressed from it. I just want to thank you guys so much for this because you guys gave me so much closure y'all could never imagine. I was born in 1971, so therefore I was 1 year old when this movie actually came out. I did not know my dad at the time. Did I long for him? Yes. I met my dad, fortunately, when I was 28 years old. This movie, literally, like I was told different things, you know, growing up and stuff like that. This movie gave me so much closure. Now I see he's an awesome dude. He's still here at his age. I really appreciate him. I love him from the bottom of my heart. We have been so close, but I thank the creator that he made it through all of that I was able to share him and everyone else. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's, yeah. And yeah, thank you all for coming and for watching Superfly with us. I hope you'll join us for the next Black on Screen, which will be a interview with Mary Lou Williams, the late jazz pianist, and we'll have that in the Latimer Gallery, and that'll be our last screening for the year. So excited to have you back, and thank you so much for trekking out on this rainy night. Yeah.